The War Eagle Mill is a beautiful water-powered mill located in Benton, Arkansas on the War Eagle Creek. Being one of the most picturesque places in Arkansas, it attracts many people interested in its rich history. It is the longest operating water-powered mill in the United States and one of the only still standing. When it was first opened by Sylvanus and Catherine Blackburn, they did not know how important it would be, but it provided a central location that brought together many communities. In 1832, Sylvanus Blackburn went to the War Eagle Valley area in search of a home for him and his wife, Catherine Blackburn. When he finally found a suitable piece of land, he sent for Catherine at his parents' house. When she arrived, they immediately set to work and began to build a house of wood from the surrounding forests that was so well made that it is still in use today. After they built their home and began planting corn, they realized that the only mill in the area was 25 miles away. They knew that their community was in need, so they decided to build one. Since Sylvanus and Catherine Blackburn lived along the War Eagle Creek, they decided that it would provide a perfect energy source to power the new mill that they were going to build. With wood from the surrounding area, they built their mill, and once they finished it, they put it to good use. When people heard of the new mill, everyone in nearby communities started to bring the Blackburns their crops so that they could mill it. The people were happy and thankful that they did not have to travel 25 miles just to process their crops. The mill and the Blackburns' helpfulness and hospitality established a close community near them. After more than a decade of prosperous operation, the Blackburns suffered a great loss. In 1848, the area had a very heavy rain season that flooded the entire valley. The storm pushed the entire mill into the river and carried it downstream, completely destroying it. Sylvanus, Catherine, and the community were devastated. They had lost a central thing in their lives. A lot of people suffered because of the loss of the mill, but none mourned greatly than the Blackburns. As the heavy rain receded, Sylvanus and Catherine did not quit. They immediately set to work because of their determination to rebuild the mill and restore it to its former glory. They wanted to make it better, so they made plans to add a sawmill also. In 1860, they were finally able to complete it and they opened for business again. After the second mill was completed, tragedy struck again. In 1861, the Civil War broke out in the northwest Arkansas region. Many of the residents could not escape because they were stuck between Confederates in the south and Union soldiers in the north. As the nation was being torn apart, so were many families. Many people fled from Arkansas, including the Blackburns and their young children. They were heartbroken that they had to leave their lifelong work and their beloved mill. They knew that it was necessary, but it would be another 4 years until they would get to return. After the Blackburns fled, the mill was abandoned. Throughout the whole war, the mill helped feed soldiers from both sides of the war and also served as camps for them. In 1862, tragedy struck again, for the third time. Union soldiers used the mill to grind their grain as they were moving into Arkansas. They stayed and camped there for a while in tent camps set up all around the area. Then, the Confederate soldiers began to move into the area. The Union soldiers packed up and moved to Pea Ridge, leaving the War Eagle Mill to the Confederates. Since they took over, they began to use the mill and set up camps. They were not a stable military, though. They could not keep one place for very long, so the generals commanded it be burned to the ground. They did not want to give the Union soldiers the advantage of using it again, so instead they destroyed it. After the Battle of Pea Ridge, the whole area was left in chaos. The Confederate troops laid waste to the entire area as they were retreating. They destroyed and looted everything they could. The Bentonville and Fayetteville areas were destroyed by raging fires, making them one of the first areas burned down by the Civil War. The crops and the mill were in ashes, making the area uninhabitable. It would be years until people returned to the area. Then, in 1865, the mill would finally be rebuilt again. The Blackburns returned to their home and found it intact, but the mill was completely in ashes. Sylvanus and Catherine were too old to take on the task of reconstructing the mill, so their son, J.A.C. Blackburn, would take over. He not only rebuilt the mill and sawmill, he decided to expand it and make it more efficient. Instead of leaving the mill as water wheel operated, he made a powerful grinding machine powered by a turbine engine. This increased the productivity exponentially, and many more people came to the War Eagle mill to get their crops processed. The sawmill was so large that JAC was known as the Lumber King by many in Arkansas. In fact, most of the lumber used to build Fayetteville was cut in the War Eagle Mill sawmill. It was a prosperous time for the mill until tragedy struck again. In 1942, the mill burned down. It is not known why, but only the foundation was left. Everything that they worked so hard on was gone. After the destruction of the mill for the third time, the Blackburns gave up. They did not attempt to rebuild it and instead just left their home. Then, in 1973, the mill was given another chance at life. It was purchased by Mr. Jewel Medlin. He, his wife, and daughter took on the task of rebuilding such a wonderful mill. They found blueprints of the third mill and set to work. Instead of building the mill with a turbine engine like JAC Blackburn, the Medlins restored the undershot water wheel system that Sylvanus had originally put in place. Currently, War Eagle Mill is the only working mill in Arkansas that is powered by a water wheel. It is also currently believed to be the only working undershot water wheel still being operated to this day in the United States. Currently, the War Eagle Mill is owned by Marty and Elise Rognick. It continues to be a place where people come together, but now instead of milling their crops, they just want to partake in the rich history that the mill has. It is like a phoenix rising out of the ashes, immortal and breathtakingly beautiful.